Hi everybody, this is Andrew from Groove Synthesis, and I'm going to be giving you a demonstration of how to get started with the new sampling feature that we added to the third wave. The first step you want to do is go to our website and download and install our latest OS version 1.8. Without doing that, you will not have access to any of the things that I'm describing, so that's an important first step. The first thing we're going to want to look at is the oscillator section. Previous to this update, with the wavetable setting, you had 3 different types of wavetable slots. You had ones beginning with P. They were the classic PPG wavetables. We had the U wavetable slots. Those were the modern wavetables. And we also had slots with the prefix A. Those were analog waveforms. And now with this new update, we've added a new type that begin with S. These S slots stand for sampling. But when you first install this update, you're not going to have any of these S slots available to you because you don't have any samples loaded on the machine. So let's go ahead and show you how to load samples and save them to memory. The first step you're going to want to do is go to the global button and look at a new option we've added called Manage Sample Memory. Let's navigate to that screen. And in this screen, it shows you all of the samples that you have saved to memory. There's a table here. You could select the samples using the first encoder above the screen. Also above the table, it tells you how much memory you have used and how much memory is still available. When you first install the update, you're not going to have anything in this table because there are no samples there. So I'm going to go ahead and clear this out, and it'll be as if I've just installed the update. So I'm going to scroll to the right and hit this Clear All button. I've cleared out all of the samples out of the memory, and I've emptied all of my S slots. I'm starting fresh now, so let's go ahead and add some samples. The first thing, let's scroll to the left with this left arrow button. I'm going to click the New button. And there's a few ways you could add new samples to the machine. One way is to record directly into the input on the back. There are a few options for recording. One option here, the rightmost encoder above the screen, is an input gain. You could set this to set the input level to adjust for low-level audio sources. There's more options if you scroll to the right with this right arrow and hit the Options button. Here you could set the input sample rate. You could set it to 48 kilohertz, 24 kilohertz, or 12 kilohertz. If you set it to a lower sample rate, you'll use less memory. And you could also get a nice low resolution sampling effect. Let's keep it at 48K for now. I'm going to hit back. To record directly into the machine, all you have to do is hit this arm button to arm the recording. And now as soon as it detects audio coming into the input, it'll start recording. And then once the audio ends, it'll stop recording and you'll see your waveform on the screen. But for now, we're going to load in a sample another way by connecting the synth to the computer and copying a WAV file. So I'm going to connect the USB of the synth to my computer, and it's going to show up as a external hard drive with a few folders. One of the folders is called Audio. So I'm going to go to my computer, find the audio directory, and copy my WAV file there. I'm going to use a sample from the original Waveterm B library called T400. I'm copying it to the audio directory. I have it there now, so I want to load it into the machine. I'm going to click the right arrow button to scroll to the right and choose Load File. Now it should show me the name of the file that I copied. I'm going to hit the OK button, and there is my sample to save to memory. I can use the first 2 encoders to set the start of the sample and end of the sample that I want to save. I could hit this play button to listen to it, but let's go ahead and save it. And when we save it, we're going to have to set a few options. The first option with the first encoder above the screen is which of those S slots I want to assign this sample to. Right now I only have one option, S00. That's because I don't have any samples loaded onto the machine yet. But if I did have other ones loaded, I'd be able to save it to the first empty slot or to an existing slot, and that could take up one of the 8 multi-samples that you could spread across the keyboard. The second option here is bit depth. You could set it to 16-bit, 12-bit, or 8-bit samples. I'm going to leave it at 16-bit. Another important setting you need to set is the assigned note. This corresponds to what note on the keyboard will play back the sample at the original pitch. Right now it's set to C4. All I have to do is hit a key on the keyboard and it'll update. Now it's D4, E4. Let's leave it at C4. And lastly, we set the name of the sample. This is like setting the name of a preset. I'm going to clear this out and just set it to demo for now. Demo. Hit OK to save the sample. This will take a few seconds. And once it's saved to memory, it'll bring you to the screen to edit the multi-sample slot. So here we have sample S00. At this point, I could go to my wavetable and I could select that slot and it's ready to play. Let's play C. And there's our sound, our choir sound of the sample we just loaded. But let's go back. We could edit some of the settings here for the slot. For example, you could set a different start and end. Now we just updated the start. Let's hear. Now it's much different. And you could set loop settings. We'll show you more of that later. But one important thing to take account is once I've edited all of these settings, in order for them to persist, you're going to want to write the patch. Otherwise, when you turn off the machine or go to a different preset, you'll lose all your changes. So if I want to save where I set this start, I'm going to write and save the patch over. And now it's updated. Another important note is it didn't actually change what we have saved in this managed sample memory. This sample that's here is still the full length, so if I assign it to a different slot, you could use a different set of settings for that slot, but you still have access to the full sample. And that's a broad overview of getting started with sampling. I'm going to show you one other thing, and that's the ability to bulk load many WAV files at one time. So you don't have to go one at a time setting the name and updating all the settings, which can be a little tedious. So let's do that. I'm going to go back to my computer and I'm going to copy many WAV files into the audio directory this time. So I'm going to do that. I'm off screen, copying files to the audio directory. Let's take a few one. Let's choose T40 for the bass. Okay. Copying them to the audio directory. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I copied 6 WAV files to the audio directory, and now I don't want to go one by one and load them in one at a time. I want to do them all at once. I'm going to go back to the Manage Sample Memory screen, hit the right arrow, and choose Bulk Load. It'll show me how many WAV files I've copied to the audio directory, 6. I'm going to click OK. And it's going to load all 6 WAV files and use the file name for the name of the sample. So this is going to take a second, and now we have all of these samples loaded into memory. Now, right now, they're just there in memory. They're not assigned to any slots. So if we want to actually use them, we have to go back to editing our sample slots. So let's go ahead. We can go back to the wavetable S00. Let's hit sample. There's also a shortcut to get to this menu from the global settings. Now you'll notice I can add to this existing slot S00, but I could also go up one to the first empty slot. And now there's no samples in this slot. I could add to it. Let's choose T40, our bass sound. I'm going to assign the note for T40. Let's choose a different note. I don't remember what note it was recorded at, but let's choose F3. We're going to hit select. And now it's going to be in slot S01. This has its separate set of settings you could edit with its own looping, its own start and end. But now we could update the wavetable to be S01. And there's our bass sound, opposed to our choir sound at S00. And that's a quick overview of getting samples into the machine to get you started with sampling on the third wave.
All right, I'm going to talk to you now about how to edit samples once they're in the machine. And we're going to use this piano as an example. So we'll start with this by coming over to oscillator 1. Oscillator 1 is the only thing that we're using, but you can put a sample on oscillator 1, 2, or 3, or anything else you want. But we'll go to the wavetable selector that you're used to, and you will see now that there is a S type of wavetable. So the S signifies sample, and it's a sample slot is what we're calling it, but you could also have a P for PPG wavetable, you could have a U for user wavetable, you could have an A for an analog waveform, and now you've got this. If you select an S, you'll see there's a sample here, and I'm going to hit the sample button, and we will see that we are on one of 4 multi-samples in this case. So you can have a total of 8 samples across the keyboard if you want. In this case, we've got 4. You've got this one, an octave up. We've got a second one. We've got a third one. And then we've got a fourth one right here. We're looking at the first one. Let's start with this screen by hitting the Add Multi. The Add Multi allows you to add another sample in there. So if I hit Add Multi, we're going to take this Life's What loop, and we're going to go ahead and assign a note to it. So I'm going to assign G6 by hitting the note. I'm going to hit Select, and now this is in there, and I've got that sample in there. Of course, we don't want that for this example, so I'm going to show you as you go across, there is also a Remove Multi button. We're going to hit the Remove Multi, and we're already on 5 of 5, so it's going to remove that. Now we're back to where we were with 4 piano notes. Okay, so I'm going to go back down to the lowest one of those samples, and I did that by choosing it with the multi-sample selector. You can see I'm doing that right now. We're back on the bottom note. Okay, what you see in the screen here, is Add Multi, and then we're on loop. So first I'm going to show you the start. That's this. And if we move this way down, we're going to hear it's much quieter because we've changed the start point of the sample. If I bring it all the way back to the beginning, now we've got the whole sample. You've also got an end here. Now let's go to this loop screen, this second button. If I hit this, we are now in the loop screen, and you can see that the red lines, which signify where the loops are, those red lines can be changed. Let's first just turn it off. So I'm going to hit the on-off button. Now we don't have a loop. So if I play this note again, it'll be a one-shot. And there it ends. Okay, let's turn looping back on. Now we've got looping on, and we can go ahead and hit the crossfade button, and we're going to see what different types of crossfades do we have. We've got equal volume, that's the sinusoidal crossfade, and that's the optimal one for this particular sample. We've got equal power, that's a linear crossfade, and then we've got off. Now if I hit off and hold this note, you're going to eventually hear a click as it tries to loop. And there you go. Now if we turn it back on, we're now on equal power, which is linear. You'll hear this will work, but you're going to get a volume fluctuation. There it is. But it still is much smoother. If you go to, in this case, equal volume, you'll hear a bit of a noticeable loop, but much better. You've also got the length of the crossfade. We're at 872 milliseconds, so 0.872 seconds. You can bring this out all the way to the full length of your loop if you want. Now we've got a much longer loop. Not necessarily optimal for this particular sample, so we'll bring it back to 872, but you can select whatever length you want, and try this until you get something that you really like. All right, we've shown you the crossfading. I'm going to go back, and we are still in the loop window. You can see loop start, loop end, and I'm going to go back one more, and now we're back to where we started. So we've shown you add multi, we've shown you looping. If you hit play, it just plays the sample back. And if I go to the next side, you've got copy. Now, what is copy? Copy takes the whole slot, the whole SO1 in this case, and it copies it to a new slot that you can use in a different patch. But it allows you to use the same samples over. Anything with the crossfading, anything with the tuning, or any other parameters that you want to change, those would go into that new slot if you wanted to edit them. But that allows you to have more than one slot with the same set of samples if that's what you want. The next item is edit name, and that's obvious as to what it says. You can just change the name of your slot, and that happens exactly like you would with a patch. You've got the cursor location and the symbol. Now if we go back again, we are going to go over one more, and we've got remove multi. You saw me do that a moment ago. We can remove any of these 4, in this case, multi-samples that we've got going with this particular slot. You've got clear slot. I'm not going to hit that, but if you do, it will clear the entire set of multi-samples and the name and everything. So that just clears the whole thing if that's what you want to do. And finally, probably the most important one besides looping is set note. So if I hit the set note screen, you've got several items here. First one is what note is a sample assigned to. This is the bottom note that we're working on. So you see it's assigned to A2. If you hold the assigned key, then you can change the note that it's assigned to. I just changed it an octave up to A3. But now let's bring it back down, and we're going to put it back to A2. So we're on A2 now, and you can also change, I'm going to let go of the assigned, you can also change the minimum note that you have and the maximum note. In this case, we've got a minimum note because it's at the bottom 2 octaves lower, because you can shift up to 2 octaves down or 2 octaves up. The upper maximum note there is set to D sharp 3. Why is that? Well, it's not because we had to actively assign it. This will assign it for you automatically. It just splits the difference between the sample that you're on and the next one higher. So in this case, it comes out to that D sharp. You can change that at will, but if you don't, this will do it for you. Last but not least, we've got tuning. You can tune each sample independent of the other ones. So if I've got, here we are at this A, I'm going to bring the tuning up. You can go up a total of 2 semitones, or you can go down a total of 2 semitones. This will help if you've got samples that are out of tune with each other. This will allow you to change those. It will also help you with drum loops. So drum loops, it doesn't matter what the tuning is, but the actual speed, this will allow you to speed it up or slow it down independently of the rest of the samples that are in that multi-sample set. And with that, I'm going to go back, and we're going to go over to the left, and we are back to where we started from. So that shows you how to manipulate samples and what you can do with samples once they are in the machine.
Okay, now we're going to show you what happens when you connect the third wave to your computer through USB. We're going to take you through the process of updating the firmware. To do that, the first thing you're going to want to do is connect your USB to the port in the back of the third wave. And after you do that, the third wave will show up like an external hard drive on your computer. Here it is. Here's third wave. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to drag it down here, and you'll see that you have 4 folders. There's the audio folder, the firmware folder, programs, and waves. Now, when we want to update the OS, you're going to take your loader file. This is a file that ends in the extension LDR. I have a demo of update 1.8. I'm going to take it and drag it to the firmware directory. So now it's copying. This is going to take a moment. There it goes. We're going to wait for it to complete the copy. Make sure it's done copying. You don't want to do this update until the copy is complete. Once it's complete, we're actually going to eject the third wave drive from your computer. This is for safety, especially on a Mac. Otherwise, you might have to end up resetting the machine, but it's better just to eject. Okay, I think it is done copying. Let's look in firmware. There it is. So next step, I'm going to eject the third wave drive. Here we go. Eject. There it goes. Now the file is still on the machine. We just don't have it connected to the computer. We're going to go here to the global menu, scroll all the way down. It's towards the bottom. You're going to see an option that says firmware update. I'm going to select that. It should show me the name of the file I copied. Hit OK to start the update. Give it a few seconds. You want to wait till it completes. Definitely do not turn off the synth while it's updating. But even if you do, we have a way to reset it back. But just give it a few minutes. It'll tell you when it's done, and then you have to reboot, and you'll be up to date with the new version. Okay, it has completed. It tells you firmware update complete. Please reboot the synth. We're going to go ahead and turn it off. We're going to wait a few seconds and turn it back on. You'll be greeted with our logo on the splash screen, and it's going to take you through the boot up process. You'll see it's loading wavetables. There it goes. We have 101 wavetables on this unit because we use it for a lot of testing. It's going to take a few moments to load them all up. Once it completes loading the wavetables, you're going to see a new status bar that tells you it's transferring the sample memory. Okay, loading the wavetables. Now it's transferring the sample memory. And now you're booted and ready to go. The next thing I'm going to show you is copying a WAV file from your computer to load as a sample. So we're going to go connect the synth to your computer via the USB port. It shows up here as a external hard drive. I'm going to open it up. We have our 4 folders: audio, firmware, programs, waves. For this to import a new sample, we want to copy our WAV file to the audio directory. So I'm going to take this T65 WAV file. This is an orchestra hit from the original Waveterm B library. I'm going to drag it to the audio directory. Let's see if it's there. There it is. Once I've copied the file to the audio directory, I'm going to go back to the synth, hit the global button. We're going to navigate to manage sample memory. Here we have all our samples that are already in memory, but we're going to add a new one. So we click the new button, scroll to the right with the right arrow and hit load file. You'll see the name of the file that I just copied. Click OK, and there is the sample. We can make some edits. We could choose save to save it into a sample slot. Here we're going to set a few settings. The first one is which slot you're going to save it to. You could save it to an existing one that will take up one of the 8 multi-samples to spread across the keys, or you can assign it to an empty slot. You could set the bit depth, and then of course you could set the assigned note by playing a key on the keyboard. Right now it's C4. Hit D4, E4, but let's leave it at C4. And we give it a name like you would for a preset. Let's clear this out and just call it A, B, C for now. Click OK. We're saving it to slot S2. This will take a few seconds, and once it's complete, it'll bring you to the screen where we can edit the settings for that multi-sample slot S2, where we see our new sample. So multi-sample 1 of 1. And of course, we can start playing it, set our oscillator to S02, and here's our sample. And we're ready to go with our samples loaded.
All right. We have shown you how to load samples up and manipulate them once they're in the machine. But what we're going to do now is show you how to actually bring samples in, make a quick patch, and save them out. We actually have a format that they're saved in that will be .bin, which will allow you to save the whole multi-sample and all the settings with it to make things easier to go in and out. So first thing I'm going to do is go to Global, and as we have done before, I'm going to go down to Manage Sample Memory, hit Go, and then I'm going to go to the end and hit Clear All. Okay, so we got nothing in here right now. Now I'm going to go over to the computer, and I'm going to take the waveterm library, which has these items right here. I'm going to pull these 4 samples into the audio folder on the third wave, and you can see the third wave is mounted here as a hard drive, which is what happens when you first bring it in. So we've got those 4 samples here. It's a Fender Rhodes, and what I'm going to do now is over here in the Manage Sample Memory, you see there's a bulk load. We've already gone through that once. I'm going to hit bulk load. It's going to say it's got 4 wave files. I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to load those wave files in. It's going to take a moment to figure out where to put them in memory, and then there we are. So now we've got these wave files here, but we've got no multi-sample, nothing like that going. So what we're going to do is we're going to get out of this, we're going to go back to Global, and this is a new one that we haven't talked about yet. So instead of Manage Sample Memory, we're going to Manage Multi-Samples. So I'm going to hit Go on that, and it's going to say, hey, we're in S00, but we've got nothing loaded there. Well, we had mentioned earlier that you can do Add Multi. I'm going to hit Add Multi here, and we are going to select the first sample. So the first sample, T851, we're going to hit Select, and there it is. Now, you can do this either before or after the fact. I can see that there's dead air at the beginning of this sample, so I'm going to bring it up a little bit, and then I'm going to go ahead and move over, and one more time, and I'm going to set note. So if I hit set note, I know this particular sample is an F, so I'm going to hit assigned, hold it, and hit F. Okay, we've now got that note at F3. All right, so let's go back, and we are going to go ahead and add the next multi. So the next multi was the second one we had in there, T852. I'm going to hit select again, and once again, it's got a little bit of dead air at the beginning. I'm going to move that over, and then we're going to go ahead and hit set note. This one's an octave higher, so I'm going to hold assigned, and I'm going to hit F4. And now we've got that note. All right, so now let's go back again, and we're going to go add multi one more time, and we are going to go to the third note, okay, or the third sample rather that we brought in. So I'm going to hit select on that guy. Again, all of these from the original PPG library have got some space at the beginning. So I'm going to get rid of that, going to go to the end here and hit set note again. This one is again an octave higher, so I'm going to hold the assign key and I'm going to hit F5. Now we've got that note. All right, last one. Let's go back one more time and add the last multi in this batch, and that is going to be sample 8 or T856. So I'm going to select that one, and once again I'm going to take care of the silence at the beginning, and I'm going to go to the end, hit set note, and hold the assign key, and then hit F6. So now I've got these 4 notes in here. We haven't done much with them yet, but we are on a patch that I'd already put in here, but all the samples were removed because we had just done that. So if I go in here, I'm going to say we're on slot S00 because that's the slot that we just loaded up. and I'm going to hit sample so we can loop at what's in there. So here is our first one, and that's that note. It says 1 of 4, and it is playing as a one shot right now, which you just heard. It ends very quickly. So we are now going to turn on loop, which I'd showed before, but this time we're going to actually set a loop. So if I turn the on-off key, we now have a loop start and end that are all the way at the beginning and the end of this particular note. So I'm going to try to find a location that's roughly good with volume, and then I'm going to go ahead and go into the crossfade and see what we've got. So if I hold this note, we're getting something, but it's going whoa, 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 whoa. Let's show you what it sounds like if it's off. Of course, you get the big click. And then let's go to equal volume. Better. Now, let's try to change this a little bit. Not that it will necessarily matter a lot, but you can change the length of your crossfade. Okay, let's call that 1. All right, so I'm going to go back, and I am going to go back one more time. And we're going to go, actually, I'm not going to go back one more time. I'm just going to go to the next multi-sample. So now we're up here at this note, and you can hear it's a one shot right now. And so I'm going to go ahead and hit on off for the loop. We've now got the loop. And again, we're just going to try to find a location that would be pretty good to do a loop with and not get into really bad volume issues. All right. So let's see what we've got here. You can hear it, but it's not too bad. So if I go to crossfade again, I'm on equal power. If I go to equal volume, that's worse. I'm going to go back to equal power in this case, and I'm going to make it maybe longer. Not too bad. There we go. Okay, so we've got equal power on that. And now let's go back one more time. Now we're going to go to multi-sample 3. So we're on multi-sample 3. You can see what this looks like. Again, I'm going to turn on the looping. Right now it's set to the whole length. So we're going to go in until this thing starts to fade out a bit. And we're going to bring this back off the back until we're at roughly something that's equivalent volume. And let's see what we've got. Not too bad right off the bat. Okay, crossfade. Again, if I turn this completely off, that's terrible. But that's not bad. I'm going to just leave that. We got lucky. You don't always get lucky, but we got lucky that time. All right, back, and then let's go to the last multi-sample. So here's the last one. Again, I'm going to turn the looping on, and we're going to move the loop out. I'm going to try to get about halfway through this sample and pick something as this part fades out for a rough volume match. Bring this as it's starting to fade out as well. And then let's hit this note. Actually, not too bad once again. I don't know why we're getting lucky with this one. But if you go into crossfade, you can see we're crossfading over 126 milliseconds. It's equal power. You can try off, which is terrible. You can try equal volume. That's not bad either. Let's leave it at there. Okay, so we now have a patch in here. And what I'm going to do is go back, and I'm going to say on this, we are only using one oscillator. So, okay, so I'm just going to get, I put a sequence in here. So let's hear what this thing sounds like now with the looping and everything on. Not too bad. It sounds like a Rhodes, which is what we were after here. I'm going to put a second oscillator in, which is not using the Rhodes sample, and we're going to play this note. And this is actually just using something from a synthesizer that we've got a wavetable in here for, and we're adding that in just to make it sound a little bit fuller. All right, so I'm going to write this whole thing now, so we've got the thing saved, which you always want to do. So I'm on patch program 65. I've already named it Rhodes because it was in here before, but I didn't have these samples in, and now I'm going to hit OK. All right, so we now have this Rhodes patch. I've got too much stuff in front of me here while I'm filming, so you're not going to be able to hear much of this. Otherwise, I'd play you a nice big chord, but it's all there. And we are going to go ahead now and save this back to the computer. So once you've got your patch the way you want it, once you got your samples the way you want it, once you got a multi-sample how you want it, you want to save that back to the computer at some point, because you do have 35 seconds of sample memory, but this is certainly not big like something like Contact. So you will run out of sample memory eventually, and just like the wavetables are independent of the programs. So these samples are independent of the programs. We showed you earlier that you can copy a sample, or a slot as we call it here, the S0, which I'll go back to here. This slot, you can copy it to another location if you want and reuse the samples, but at some point you want to save this down and it will actually load back in exactly as you have it. So I'm going to go back to the global, and we're going to go down to manage multi-samples. Excuse me, not manage multi-samples. We're going to go down to export sample library. So we're going to go down to export sample library. We're going to hit go, and it's going to say, where do you want to put this? USB? Yeah, we're going to use the USB over here on the computer, and we're going to save it to the audio directory. So we had just loaded these 4 samples in. I'm going to go ahead and delete them at this point because we don't need them on the third wave. And then I'm going to hit OK over here on the third wave itself, and you will see that it'll disappear momentarily and it will come back up, and there's our third wave. And if you look at the audio folder, we now have something called a .bin file, and that has the name of that first sample, T851. So we now have the sample itself saved off. The only other thing to do is now, because I just said the samples are independent of the patch, and you can load other samples into this Rhodes patch and it'll sound different. But let's go ahead and save the program itself. So I'm going to go back over here to the third wave, hit global, and we're going to come down to past the MIDI section where we can export a program. And I'm going to hit go, and it will tell me current program directory, and I hit OK. And again, over on the computer, it disappears momentarily while it does its thing. And then if we look in the programs, there is our program. Now, we don't have it retaining the name yet. That will be a future update. But because I know this patch is called Rhodes, I'm just going to name it Rhodes. And there we are. All right. So that is how to save the binary over. Okay, we've shown you how to make a new patch from samples, the Rhodes file, and we've already saved that off as a .bin, which has the actual individual samples and all of the parameters that are saved with that so that you can load it back in. Now what I'm going to do is go back to global, the usual place that we've gone, which is manage sample memory, and I've already erased the sample memory here. So you can see we've got nothing in there right now. We've gotten rid of the roads that we've already saved off to our computer. So now what I'm going to do is come back over to the computer, and we're going to load some patches and samples in that we were using at Superbooth. So the .bin files, as you already saw when we saved it, these come into the audio folder. So we're copying these to the audio folder right now. We're taking 3 of the items that we were using at Superbooth in, and we are going to load those in to the sample memory. So I'm going to come back to global over here on the computer, on the third wave, excuse me, and I'm going to go down to import, bulk import, multi-samples. So bulk multi-sample import, we've got those 3 items in there. If I hit go here, it says 3 files detected to import, and it tells you where it's going to load it. Now this is important. If you saved a patch where you've got something in slot 8, for instance, and you start loading it here at slot 0, you don't want to do that. So you want to pick the slot. In this case, we are on the correct slot, but you've got an encoder here that allows you to choose. So I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to start loading these. So we've got SO0, which is going to get this drum loop that we were using at Superbooth, and then we've got the string section. I don't think we used that much there, but it was a patch that we made nonetheless. It's going to go into slot 1, and then last but not least, we're going to have in slot 2 one of the items, Life's What You Make It, that is coming in there. Now, at the same time, while it's updating the voice processing memory, I'm going to come back over here because, as I said, the programs and the samples, just like the programs and the wavetables, are independent of each other. So we're going to go to the program folder on the third wave. We're going to go up here, and we're going to load these patches, these programs, into that folder. Or we're going to copy them into that folder, excuse me. Now, on the third wave, I'm going to go back to global, and just like you do with any program, I'm going to go past the MIDI area here, and we're going to see bulk program import. We're going to hit go. It'll tell me it's got 5. Where do we want to put it? Do we want to start at number 65? No, that's where we put the roads. So I'm going to change the program down to number 60, which corresponds to the first program over here. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to hit OK. And it's loading those in right now into the programs number 60 and forward. So this one should actually have a drum loop, and it does. Good. This next one should be a string section, and it is. And then the last one should be one of the loops that we were playing at Superbooth. And if I hit this part, this was a multi. There's the drum loop. And then way up here on the third part of the program, there is a B3. So that shows you how to get things in and out. And if I go back down to this first one, well, actually, let's go to the string section. If I go to the string section and again select the multi, we are on slot 1. And if I hit sample, you'll see that this is one of 3 different string section samples. So that is exactly how you will get things out and back in without having to recreate each sample individually or having to resave the parameters, the looping, the tuning, etc. So this should give you now an overview of not only how to make a patch, how to manipulate your loop points, how to do all the other things with sampling, but also how to get things in and out of the machine. All right. We hope you enjoy the sampling.